We will continue with our study of the population trend in Singapore from the early 1960s to the present day. Part 2, 1980s to the present day. In this section, you will learn how the 4 principles of good governance were closely engaged by Singapore government to increase the foreign population through publicity and education, as well as providing incentive to have more babies and making changes to the immigration policies to encourage foreign talent. In this period also saw how government anticipated that more and more citizens were getting older and took various steps to meet this problem. More problem. As the population slowed down, there is a danger that there will be shortage of manpower in the business and industries to drive the economy and growth. Number 2, as more and more citizens get older and older, there is also an increasing need for resources to care for the growing population, such as more hospital and the healthcare costs as well. 3, investors were unwilling to set up multinational corporations or MNCs in Singapore for fear that the shortage of workers will mean that they will not have enough people with the necessary skill, experience and innovative spirit. In such a case, such as MNC will move away from Singapore, perhaps to the nearby country, and it will be lost to the nation. Lastly, there's the danger that the defense of our country may not have enough men and women to fill up a strong and effective force. Alright, so what are the policies that the government take to increase the population growth? Firstly, they set up the Child Development Account. 2, they also match the parental contribution to a child's saving. Thirdly, the use of Medisave for child delivery for the first 3 children. In the past, only the first 2 children born were entitled to the use of Medisave. And lastly, those bigger families will have a greater chance of being allocated HDB flats. Now the government also took some measures to show the importance of having families with children. Firstly, they introduced what we call the equalized medical benefit. Under this scheme, both parents can now make medical claims for children to employer. In the past, only the mothers were allowed to do so. Then they also increased the benefits for those whose grandparents were staying with the children. This is under the Grandparent Caregiver Relief Scheme. This was to encourage extended generations of families staying together so as to allow the grandparent to look after the children of the children. 5 days a week was introduced, firstly for the civil service, but now it's extended to most organizations and companies in the private sector. Under this scheme, workers need only to work for 5 days so as to have time for the family during the weekend, that's on Saturday and Sunday. This will help to promote more family interaction time and togetherness. Also, they introduced a Eat with Your Family Day during each year so as to remind and to reinforce the idea of having togetherness in the family during a meal. Lastly, they also extended maternity leave for mothers from 8 weeks to 12 weeks and now finally to 16 weeks. And also extended the paternity leave for fathers so that they have time to look after the family during those days when the attentions of the children are needed at home. Now, besides introducing pro-family measures and encouraging the people to get more babies, the government also make changes to the immigration policy to encourage more foreign talent to contribute to the country. Look at the two pictures on the left. On the top hand, you have workers from Bangladesh who are involved in cleaning up the flats, and at the bottom we have Indonesian men perhaps helping to be trained to be maids for families in Singapore. Now these two kind of jobs are usually shunned away by Singaporeans, and it's needed to fill them up in order to ensure the economy and the growth can go on. Areas where such places, where such workers are greatly needed are in the construction, domestic, medical, and hospitality sectors. The government makes it easier for entry for them, and also makes subsidized housing to attract certain talent and to retain them in Singapore. Now, as the year went by, there was a problem of competition from foreign countries such as Saudi Arabia, Hong Kong, and even in Japan, where these workers were better paid, and many of them tend to look to these places after they have finished their contract in Singapore. Now, besides looking at the population growth, which was going to decline, the government also realized that the population was also getting older, and the aging population is about to arise. Now, why did it happen? Firstly, it's because the post-war boom, those who were born in the 50s and 60s are now getting much older, and they should be in their 50s and 60s. So there are more and more older people by the time the 21st century turned around. The proportion of young people were also shrinking since 1970 because the birth rate had declined due to the various measures taken by the government to slow down the birth rate. And lastly, there tends to be a longer lifespan due to better health services, better care personnel, and healthy habits. As a result, the older citizens tend to live longer. Now, what are the benefits of senior citizen to our society? But they are more disciplined and responsible. They also have better business acumen due to the experience. An employer can benefit from maturity, experience, and the wisdom of the elderly. More importantly, they are likely, or rather less likely, to move from job to job. In other words, they are less likely to job hop. Many rightly also would be prepared to accept reduced job scope, responsibility, and reduction in pay. And of course, for the employer, it means it will lower cost in terms of a lower CPF contribution for each of these elderly workers. Now, the senior citizen has an individual responsibility to make sure that they can contribute to themselves as well as to the nation. Firstly, they are encouraged to stay healthy by eating, or rather by conforming to healthy habits and eating moderately. And they are also encouraged to participate in a variety of social, recreational, and sports activity, like the one picture that is shown on the left. Many retirees were also encouraged to attend talks given by government agencies as well as private organizations on how to plan their finances during their golden years. The individual must also keep themselves through lifelong learning so as to keep themselves aware and abreast of development in and around the country. The case study of this changing population trend in Singapore from the early 1960s to the present day has come to an end. However, before we end this presentation, let us try to recall what we have learned. We have learned, firstly, the population from the 1950s to the end of 1960s had very high birth rate. 2. The government had to take measures to ensure that birth rates were lowered for fears that there might be high unemployment, insufficient housing and school, and health-related problems. 3. The measures, which included campaign, education, publicity through posters and other media, helped to lower the birth rate by the end of the 1970s. 4. The birth rate declined, and by the end of the 1970s, Singapore government realized that the population had to be increased so as to meet the demands of the economy as well as people to defend the country. It also realized that more and more citizens were getting older and had to plan to cater to their needs. 5. From the 1980s onward, there was a concerted attempt by the government to provide education, incentive and changes to the immigration policies in order to increase the population. And lastly, it also provided ways and means to cater to the needs of the aging population. We have now come to the end of the lesson.